For many musicians, their look is an essential aspect of their work. It's an unavoidable part of their all-important live performances that can enhance the overall experience and make their career. So when I was listening to a podcast in 2014 and heard this voice for the first time, that was enough to get me to buy the singer's album, but I had no idea I was missing this. Once I saw this song played live, my appreciation for it skyrocketed. But the very thing that I found so appealing had, in fact, been a roadblock in this artist's career for quite some time. That is, until a few years later, when LP's status as the best-kept secret in rock music was finally remedied. Before we get to the review, we have to talk about LP's appearance. LP is gender nonconforming. Gender nonconforming means that a person's outward gender presentation defies societal expectations of what is masculine or feminine, and is therefore something observable. Worth noting, however, is that what counts as gender nonconforming is highly dependent on trends, culture, and context. A person could dress very similarly to LP and still fall neatly into binary gender norms, so this term is to be used with caution and says nothing about a person's actual gender, which is to say, how they identify. Going by initials rather than a first name is another common tactic for obscuring one's gender, famously employed in the 90s by beloved author of young adult fiction, K.A. Applegate, to avoid having her work ignored by kids who might assume a female writer would write exclusively for a female audience. Obviously, this also says nothing definitive about a person's gender. I just wanted to get in that dig at J.K. Rowling. No, the only way to understand a person's gender is to listen to them, and fortunately, the subject of LP's gender was discussed openly in a 2018 interview with Gay Star News. In this interview, LP states, "I've always been gender neutral, I just don't enforce the pronouns. I go by she and her, but I honestly don't love it. But it would take me out of my life too much to insist on they." She also states she's comfortable being considered a garden-variety lesbian woman, but makes it clear she is not cisgender, falling outside the very narrow point of being binary female in the broad spectrum of gender. With this basic element of LP's identity covered and acceptable pronouns determined, we can now begin with her biography. LP was born in Long Island, New York, and moved to New York City with her family after high school. Even by this point, she had developed the aspirations and the skills to pursue a career in music. She was encouraged by her mother, who was a professional opera singer, to embrace her unique vibrato and take opera singing lessons herself for better vocal control. Once she had a solid handle on her voice, she formed an alt-rock band called Lionfish and played shows around the city. One gig in 1998 happened to be attended by David Lowery, frontman of the platinum-selling band Cracker, who knew talent when he saw it, and asked LP to sing lead on a bonus track titled Cinderella for his upcoming album. This opened the door for LP to begin her solo career with the 2001 release of Heart-Shaped Scar, continuing her collaboration with David Lowery, who served as producer. She followed that up in 2004 with Suburban Sprawl and Alcohol, this time collaborating with Linda Perry, the lead singer of Four Non-Blondes. As suggested by this Motley Crue-ass album cover, these two albums are straightforward rock with a bit of southern twang that is wholly inauthentic. She was born and raised in New York. Now, LP is 39 years old today, so when that first album came out, she was 20. She would have been 17 for her guest appearance on Cracker's album, and somehow, on Lionfish's first recording, she was only 15, and sounded like this. I think we're all a bit irritated by stories of immensely talented Wunderkind who achieved their wildest dreams before they turned 20, and frankly, we should be. This is the sort of thing that can be used as propaganda. Proof of a meritocracy that places people where they belong in life, showing that if a teenager can thrive in this system, then those in poverty are merely suffering the consequences of laziness and poor life decisions. This is, paradoxically, meant to demonstrate that anyone can achieve anything if they try hard enough, and that some people are just better than others and deserve a larger piece of the pie at the cost of some getting none. But this simply isn't reality. Case in point, this isn't at all what happened for LP. Despite these early albums having everything going for them and a strong support tour, they went nowhere commercially. Her career stalled out, and LP's destiny to become the next Joan Jett went unfulfilled. It wasn't lack of opportunity that was about to shut down LP's solo career for a very long time, though. In fact, her debut albums had shown the major labels her tremendous artistic ability and capacity to work as both performer and songwriter, so they were all circling like sharks to exploit these qualities. The label that ultimately signed her was Island Def Jam, but they weren't truly signing LP, just her talents and work ethic. Executives pushed her to write within rigid, easy-to-sell musical genres, trying to find what niche would be the most marketable while sanding off everything unique about her style. In the end, she wrote 65 songs for them and released 0 before leaving the contract after just a year. She would later sum up why she wasn't a good fit for them in her own words, saying it was like they were taking a little tomboy and putting her in a fucking dress. This quote comes from an article promoting the new solo album she was about to release with independent label Sobe Entertainment. This time she got as far as putting out a single, but no full album followed. After ending that contract, she was signed by 2101 Records to, once again, not release an album. While LP was struggling to get her voice heard in the music industry, some of the many songs she had written were finding their way to other voices. In 2007, the song Love Will Keep You Up All Night, which she had co-written while she was with Island Def Jam, was recorded by the Backstreet Boys for their album Unbreakable. This opened a new career path for her, which was accompanied by a cross-country move to Los Angeles to become a part of their booming songwriting scene. Since 2010, she has co-written songs for 22 other artists, including Cher, Christina Aguilera, Celine Dion, and Rihanna. For a brief time, this behind-the-scenes songwriting work seemed like the role LP would be filling indefinitely. But she got another shot at the major labels when she signed with Warner Bros. Music in 2011. They gave her the chance to record the single Into the Wild, which generated considerable buzz after it was used in a Citibank commercial that awkwardly included some of the vocals to the detriment of the commercial, but the benefit of LP. Off the strength of this single, LP finally got to put out her third album in 2014, a full decade after her sophomore release. Late the following year, LP released her next two singles, Muddy Waters and Lost on You. These songs were smash hits that created a global interest in her work, so they were collected into an EP titled Death Valley, along with 3 other songs, and released in June 2016 to maintain her momentum while a full album was being completed. That album, bearing the name Lost on You after what was already its most popular track, was released that December, comprised of the 5 songs from Death Valley and 5 additional songs, but it still wasn't quite done. A deluxe version, released exclusively in Europe, contains 6 bonus tracks, including 4 new studio songs. And in May 2017, Lost on You was reissued worldwide with those 4 songs. If you were to listen to the album today, this 13-track version is the one you would hear. Almost the entirety of Lost on You is inspired by and about a breakup LP was going through while writing the album, and the opening track is no exception, its first single, Muddy Waters. It's about the feeling of knowing you're in a doomed relationship, but it sounds more like a grim rumination on death itself, and the actual source of its bleak tone is even darker than that.
I was kind of like comparing a relationship to like destroying the planet, how like you just keep doing it and you know it's like a finite situation where like you can only destroy it for so long before it's like spent and over, and that's what I felt like we were doing, and I just was like, I don't know.
This extreme departure from anything that would normally be thought of as pop music turned out to be exactly what the world wanted in 2016. It went on to be licensed to score the season 4 finale of Orange is the New Black, it appeared in a commercial for NBC's Shades of Blue, it closed out an episode of the Starz program Power, and it provided the soundtrack for the launch trailer of the game In the Valley of Gods. The inclusion of this boldly non-pop song paid off big time for LP, and it prepares you to expect that Lost on You will be a difficult emotional journey, though mercifully, nothing else on the album approaches this level of intensity. Tasked with shifting gears from apocalyptic mourning to catchy toe tappers is the second song, No Witness. It's done in a style I mostly associate with late 90s pop hits like Hit Me Baby One More Time or Bye Bye Bye, songs characterized by huge swells that land like a punch in the face. This harsh but familiar style of music is paired with vague lyrics that could be about social justice issues, but really the only reason I say that is because of the music video. What we have here is a fairly innocuous song done in a popular style with a video that uses shocking images to comment on ongoing societal problems, which made me think, is this LP's crass attempt to make her own version of Childish Gambino's This Is America? Then I realized the No Witness video was released more than 6 months before This Is America. It just comes from the same place of anger at the state of the world that has brought about socially conscious art across all mediums and genres in roughly the same time period. The album's title track, Lost on You, was an international juggernaut upon release. It started in Greece, where it shot right to #1 and stayed there for 22 weeks. From there, it spread across Europe and would hit the top of the charts in 13 countries. More of a modest hit in LP's home country, it still handily broke the top 50 in the US and went all the way to 26 on the adult top 40. Today, Lost on You has hundreds of millions of plays on both of its official YouTube videos and on Spotify.
When you get older, plainer, saner, will you remember all the danger we came from? Burning like embers, falling tender, longing for the days of no surrender years ago.
Lost on You is meant to be relatable to anyone who's ever felt heartbreak, and judging by its global success, it does so admirably. But I believe these opening lines allude to the much less universal experience of being queer. References to the danger we come from and the days of no surrender bring to mind the specific hardships faced by same-sex couples and the anti-establishment roots of all pride celebrations. Concerns that can fade from consciousness as a person's individual circumstances become good enough that they no longer have to worry about them. It's subtle, there are certainly other ways to interpret these lyrics, but I don't think someone who hadn't lived as a visibly queer person would have expressed these sentiments in the same way. The tracks added to the 2017 reissue are placed throughout its runtime, and the first of them appears here. This new song is titled When We're High, but don't worry, it's not actually about drug use, that's just a metaphor for sex. By far the most sexually charged song on the album, When We're High also has an absurdly horny video, in which LP goes to a party and along the way turns everyone she meets gay. This one has much more fun with the subject it covers than the preceding tracks and is just a great song, making it an essential addition to the album. Less so is Switchblade, the second of the new tracks featured on the re-release. It has an incredible chorus, truly breathtaking, but the rest of the song is slow-paced, not very dynamic, and probably about a minute too long. I'd rather it just got to the next track that much sooner. Up Against Me is of a genre I can only describe as car commercial electronica, and I'm a total sucker for that sort of thing. This is my second favorite song on the album. But while it may sound like a commercial, this song hasn't actually been licensed for anything, and is the only song on the album with less than 1 million views on YouTube as of this recording. This might have something to do with the fact that Up Against Me makes the subtext I read in Lost on You into plain text, openly discussing the current and historical difficulties faced by queer couples, and the inherent rebelliousness of expressing that identity.
A tiny wall inside your head that chips away and wants you dead. It's all about what Lennon said. Let's change the world from bed. Don't believe the government or anything you read. There's nothing really matters when you're up against me.
The song's title has a dual meaning, acknowledging the outside forces that make her and her partner's lives more difficult for being gay, but they're gonna do it anyway. And I of course mean do it in the high school vernacular. Homer Simpson once said about the physical act of same-sex love that if there was a law, it would be against it. And that law was on the books in much of America when he said that, with many new laws limiting employment opportunities and access to public spaces for queer people being proposed and passed since then. The systematic oppression of marginalized groups makes it easier to exploit their labor and deprive them of resources. So, as long as labor exploitation and resource hoarding are goals of those in power, just being out of the closet will stand in direct defiance of established power structures, as this song highlights. It's really great to see this celebration of queerness in the middle of an album that otherwise only talks about relationships in terms of lamenting their conclusion. But that is a subject we're about due to get back to. Next song is called Suspicion. No points for guessing how that ties into a romance in jeopardy. It's not bad. It's just the sort of song I could see coming from any of the other pop stars she's written for. Doesn't really have much that's unique about it, so it barely feels like an LP song. The order of the next two tracks was flipped in the reissue of the album, so Other People follows Suspicion. This song goes into further detail on how mistrust led to her breakup, specifically blaming her partner's insistence on making theirs an open relationship. More than anything else though, Other People is a showcase of LP's strongest vocal skills. Her deep, breathy crooning, her operatic vibrato, and of course, whistling.
You broke the spell and wanted something else. Well, go fuck yourself with other people.
LP is a legendary whistler, and uses that ability here to turn the song into a sort of spaghetti western theme, another unexpected move that paid off. This is the album's third single, her follow-up to Lost on You, and it performed admirably, even going platinum in Italy. Tightrope is the track that was displaced when Other People was bumped up in the re-release, and it's a far more typical pop song with an extremely catchy chorus. It also had a music video made, which is bookended with completely unrelated scenes of LP meeting with a trio of executive types. We know she's had her troubles with executives in the past, and these scenes may be specifically referencing an incident that took place after the release of her previous album. She was called up to meet the new president of her record label and played in the 3 best songs she was working on. These songs were Muddy Waters, Lost on You, and Strange, an upcoming track that would also become the subject of a lucrative licensing deal with Samsung. The label president's response was, "We're going to drop you." The 3 best songs LP felt she was able to make had gotten her fired. As part of the termination of her contract, the label agreed to write off the $1.6 million advance they had loaned her to cover recording costs, but her music now had nowhere to go, and her major label debut was at risk of being her final album. Luckily, she had an in at Vagrant Records, a much smaller label that had enough faith in her artistry to promote her vision without executive meddling, which is exactly what she needed to bring her career to the heights it has reached since. This all goes to disprove another myth of capitalism, that executives earn their preposterous salaries by working harder than anyone else, doing important tasks at which they are uniquely qualified. These highest-ranking officials of the Warner Music Group serve the sole purpose of determining the marketability of music, yet when presented with music that has proven to be highly marketable, they ate a loss of well over $1 million to not release it, and instead offer it up to their competition. The president who made this decision stayed in that position for 4 years and remains a well-regarded music executive to this day. In the original release of Lost on You, this is where Into the Wild fell, her 2011 breakthrough single that also appeared on her preceding album. It's a song I love hearing, and this is a new version with a heavier focus on percussion to better suit this album, but it has no business being here and was rightfully removed from the final release. Instead, the next track is the aforementioned Strange, my personal favorite LP song. It's about the support she gets from a relationship that isn't romantic, but rather one she has with her community. And it's not much of a stretch to think that may be the queer community.
When you're lost and you're left and it's getting worse, they're the ones who you know will get you by. We are straight, and it ain't never gonna change. Thank you. 'Cause
It's meant to be inclusive. Like she says, we're all strange. But the refusal to change has been a recurring theme when talking about queerness, and seems to be echoed here. 2 short verses of deeply moving lyrics culminate in a harmonica solo that serves as the climax of the album, leading into the denouement, which begins with a song called Death Valley. For being the title track of the EP through which many of these songs were originally released, Death Valley is a bit forgettable, aside from opening with a Bob Dylan impression.
dime store, rock and roll, stretching out into forever.
It's the shortest song on the album too, so it quickly gives way to You Want It All, which is an album closer if ever there was one. It surges melodramatically as LP comes to accept the reasons her relationship could never have worked out. So it's a tad awkward that the re-release added another final track after this one. I don't have anything bad to say about Long Way to Go to Die, the true end of the album. It just didn't really need to be here. She once again asserts her determination to move on with her life, then sings along with a gospel chorus the words Hallelujah, glad I knew ya. Lost on You can be a bit of a downer at times, but the emotional honesty of the hurt it expresses brings out LP's best vocal performances to date, which is really saying something. Along with that personal touch comes bold messages of queerness and social justice that are very satisfying to see in such an accessible form. There's also an immense amount of variety in musical approach that invites endless replays, and it seems like just about anyone could find something to love on this album, as many millions of people already have. LP's story is still unfolding, and she has much more to offer. The label that released Lost on You has since been absorbed by Sony BMG, so she's back in the major label cesspool. But she's faring much better this time now that she has a proven commercial success to her name. She put out the album Heart to Mouth in 2018 and has recently released a new single, likely heralding her next full length. She remains uncompromising in who she is and what she does, and it seems the record industry has finally accepted that and gotten out of her way. The bio of her official YouTube channel makes a claim you would expect to see more from a metal band than a pop singer. The promise of no filter, no censorship, and no bullshit. Her gender-defiant appearance and explicitly sexual lyrics about sapphic love have opened the minds of many of her listeners. Click on any of the videos on her channel and you'll find countless comments from people she's made question their sexuality and their expectations of gender. Her mainstream acceptance normalizes facets of daily life that are indeed normal for herself and for the entire LGBTQ community, but were considered too extreme to address directly just a few years ago when her major label debut had her dressed as feminine as they could manage after she flat out refused to wear a dress. LP is a boon to queer representation and one of the best voices you'll ever hear. Maybe I should have put this video on my LP channel. That's an incredibly forced plug for my other YouTube channel where I mostly do Let's Plays, aka LPs. So that's something you can check out if you want some video game related content in your life. I'm certainly not going to stop you. Really though, I'm just appreciative that you sat through even this one video, so thanks for watching.